The schedule for the Atlanta Braves was set up for them to make a big jump in the middle of May, but they didn't quite do enough, losing 2 games to the Nationals this week. We'll talk about that and Ronald Acuña Jr.'s return on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and leave me a comment down below. And if you're listening on the audio version, you can help out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. I do truly appreciate it. There are so many great Braves podcasts out there, and to know that you take the time to listen to mine each and every day, it means a lot to me. On today's episode, we got a lot to talk about. We'll discuss the game on Thursday, the Atlanta Braves dropping the series finale now, I guess, with one of them being postponed against the Nationals, losing both games in DC and not taking advantage of the schedule. We'll look at some trade partners as well. It's a couple of trade ideas out there to help the Braves in the bullpen, and we will discuss briefly Acuña's return. We'll do more of that on Friday's Mailbag podcast, and we'll set you up for the series this weekend against the Padres. So again, a lot to talk about on today's episode. But the first thing we got to talk about is the Braves lost on Thursday, 8-7 loss in extra innings. But even more so than that is just they had a chance here in the middle of May to really go on a run and, give themselves some breathing room. You get off to the slow start that you had, 0-7 to begin the year, and you have an opportunity in the middle of May that I talked about for a while, a stretch of games that should allow you to get back to an over 500, which they did that, but they end that stretch now a game under 500. When you probably should be 3 or 4 games over 500 at this point, but you just didn't do enough. And again, you're going to lose games like this throughout a Major League Baseball season. Last year, they lose a series to the White Sox. Year before that, they lose a series to the A's, who were the worst team in baseball at the time. It's baseball. You're going to drop series to bad teams, the teams that you shouldn't lose. The Dodgers just got swept by the Angels. You're going to lose games to teams that you shouldn't lose. But again, when you put yourself in an 0-7 hole and you see the division getting away from you already, it's only not even full 2 months into the season, but you're 7.5 games back of the Phillies now, who are in first place. And, you're 5.5 back of the Mets. It's not a great spot to be in. And in order to catch up, you can't let games and opportunities like this get away. So just to go over this stretch again, you had the 3 games against the Dodgers to begin the month of May. You at least win. You do lose a series, but you pick up 1 win there. And then you get 4 games against the Reds, and you win that series. And your only loss in that, a 1-run loss. And then you face the Pirates, who had just fired their manager, one of the worst teams in baseball, one of the worst offenses in baseball. And you lose that. That one's going to sting. Like, I just talked about the White Sox series last year and the A's series the year before that. I think that Pirates series is one that is going to haunt me all season now. You lose that series, you lose a game 3-2, you lose a game 4-3. The game you won was 3-2. And this was during that stretch of 1-run games that the Braves had there. You just can't lose that series. You can't. You cannot lose that series. And somehow they managed to. And then you get a 4-game set with the Nationals at home, and you win that series. But within that, you let a game get away because you played so many close games. You didn't have your top relievers available, and so you let one slip away there. So that's really 2 games now. You got to win the series in Pittsburgh, and then you had a win against the Nationals that you let get away because you couldn't use your top arms. Then you go to Boston, and you win that series, which is great, but you also let one get away there because you didn't have your top bullpen arms available. So that's really 3 games during this stretch that the Braves, could have won, should have won, that they let get away from them. Certainly 2 in that one, but you could say there's 3 games there that they let get away. And look, there's probably some games in there that the Braves won that maybe they shouldn't have, but we're just talking from the perspective of these are games that the Braves could have won, and if they're playing like I think they're capable of, they should win. And then you finish it off by losing both games to the Nationals. And the third game gets postponed to be a doubleheader in September, because who doesn't want to play a doubleheader late in September when you're probably fighting for a postseason spot? But you play essentially a 2-game set at Washington, and you drop both of them. And both of them winnable games. Now, they got behind early in both of these games, but you had plenty of time to come back and win, and they weren't able to do it. The game on Tuesday, it was a 1-run game after the second inning, and you could not find a way to score a couple of runs against the Nationals pitching staff. The game on Thursday, it was a 2-run game after the fourth inning, and you at least come back to tie it, but then you can't get that go-ahead run and you lose in extra innings. So, again, there's probably 3 or 4 games in this stretch, we'll say 3 conservatively, that you need to win. You need to find a way to win. You can't lose both of those games to Washington. You can't lose that series in Pittsburgh. And you need to at least hold on to one of those wins that you had against the Nationals, against the Red Sox. So it's just, again, as a good stretch. They did get over 500 during that stretch like I thought they would, but they finish it under 500. And I know I keep saying it, but when you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole, you cannot let stuff like that happen. And if they're going to get where they want to be, you want to be, 10 games over 500. That's where they need to be. That's where they should be. You have to go on a run where you just don't let these games get away. And you win 8 out of 10. You win 12 out of 15. They have to go on a stretch like this to dig themselves out. And this was an opportunity for them to do that. And they did fine. It just didn't do enough. You can't lose that series in Pittsburgh, and you can't lose this series at Washington. They need to do better on the road, certainly, but they can't keep playing down to these teams. They have to play like I think they're the team that they should be. And maybe some of you don't agree with that at this point, but it's frustrating. I know, but this was the stretch where they should have finished 3 or 4 games above 500, and they finished a game under 500. Now, AJ Smith-Shawver, he had that regression game. I talked about this on the last podcast. A 4.90 xERA coming in. There was going to be some regression at some point. You're facing the same team 2 times in a row, and they certainly made the adjustments, and Smith-Shawver and Drake Baldwin didn't adjust back. And I understand it worked against them the first time. Let's try it again. But when it's not trying early, you don't just keep doing it. And it was basically fastball splitter. He got 2 whiffs on 80 pitches. Clearly, they were ready for him. You get 2 swings and misses with the stuff that AJ Smith-Shawver has. Either you're tipping your pitches, or they have a good game plan against what you're going with, and you're not adjusting back to them. And I didn't think they did a good job adjusting in this one. He gets pulled in the 4th inning in the middle of an at-bat, and I loved this from Snitker. There's certainly some bad coaching happening in this game. I thought this was an opportunity to send a message to a young kid. Look, I love AJ Smith-Shawver, and I think he's going to be a good pitcher. But I thought it was an opportunity here for Brian Snitker to send a message to a young kid that your offense just got you back in the game, and you're coming out here and you can't find the strike zone, and you're basically giving, that was the game. He went out there and he walked the first batter. He fell behind 2-0, and then Snitker pulls him. That batter ends up walking, and those 2 runs score. And that was ultimately the ball game. I know they ended up losing in extra innings, but you come back out and have a shutdown inning after your offense just worked hard to tie the game up after you put them in a hole. I thought that was a teaching moment there for Brian Snitker, and hopefully it's a lesson learned for AJ Smith-Shawver. And again, I don't think he's coming out trying to walk people, but you got to be better than that. And he will be. But again, I liked that moment from Brian Snitker. And again, hopefully that's a great teaching moment for AJ Smith-Shawver. Bullpen was fine in this one. I know, Dylan Lee lost it in the 10th inning, but again, you're put in a bad situation. They do get a bunt down. They're able to manufacture a run there. But I thought the bullpen overall was fine. This was the game that I wanted for the offense. Again, I talked about this on the last podcast. When I assumed that AJ Smith-Shawver was probably going to have some regression, I said, if that's the case, I want to see the offense go out and win you a ball game. And they almost did. Look, credit to them. In the end, this game is not on the offense. You score 7 runs. This game's not on the offense. But they just didn't quite do enough. And I wanted them to come out and have a game where the starter just doesn't have it, and the offense has to win you the game. And they almost did, but not quite. And we got to talk about the sending of Austin Riley in the 9th inning. it's just inexcusable for Tuiasosopo at third base. You can't. And I don't know if Riley is taking off from the jump. I don't, from the angle that I saw, and I couldn't see Riley, but just the angle I saw on the ball that Matt Olson hit, it wasn't 100% that ball was going to get over the right fielder's head. At least to me, it didn't look like it. So I would assume that Austin Riley hesitated. And if he hesitates at all there, you got to hold him up. If the outfielder plays it cleanly off the wall, which he did, you have to hold him up. You cannot send him there. It is 1 out. There's 2 outs and Riley's running off the bat. Then sure, send him. And again, maybe Riley did. I haven't seen the angle of what Riley was doing when the ball was hitting. If Riley ran off the bat, then okay, maybe you send him there. But I would assume by how it wasn't close at all that Riley hesitated for a minute to make sure that it got over the right fielder's head. And if that's the case, you cannot send him. Worst case scenario, you have second and third with Ozuna coming up in the go-ahead run at third base with 1 out. And I get it. Braves aren't great in those situations, and Ozuna ended up popping out anyway. But even if that's the case, you give Drake Baldwin an opportunity. And maybe they walk Drake Baldwin in that scenario. I probably would. But you just can't do that. You cannot. That's just a terrible sin. And it's the second really bad sin in the past week. It's the third really bad loss in the past week. 2 of them against the Nationals, 1 against the Red Sox. But it's just inexcusable from a third base coach perspective. You cannot send Austin Riley there with Marcell Ozuna coming up, who was 3 for 3 with a walk. Drake Baldwin on deck, who I know he's over 5, but he hit some baseballs really hard. And this one had some bad luck. Another ricochet right off a pitcher that goes right to a fielder for an out. You just can't send him. It's a bad sin. It's a very bad decision by Tuiasosopo. But yeah, I mean, the offense, again, this one's not on them. They scored 7 runs, but this was the game that I was hoping for. But just obviously with them finishing it off, and they weren't quite able to do it. You aren't able to score the ghost runner in the top of the 10th inning there. CJ Nikowski saying, you don't really worry about a double play with Eli White at the plate, and what happens? He hits into a double play, right, to CJ Abrams, who all he has to do is step on the bag right next to him for an easy double play, even with Eli White's speed. A tough night for Eli White. Tough night for a lot of hitters outside of Matt Olson and Marcell Ozuna, which great to see them getting going. And now maybe you get somebody at the top in front of those 2 guys and you see this offense start to take off. We'll talk about that more later in the podcast. But next, I want to begin to look at the trade market. I know we're a little over 2 months away from the trade deadline. We're going to start every week looking at a potential trade target for the Braves to go after. And today we're going to look at relief pitcher Garrett Clevenger, as well as some of your ideas on who the Braves should trade for. We'll get into that here next. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades at SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Plus, use our code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's code SH5 for 5% off your first order at SupplyHouse.com. Thank you, as always, making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out the guys over at Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. They do a great job recapping you on everything happening around Major League Baseball, although you might not want to listen after what happened with the Braves on Thursday. But if you do, and you can still muster listening to baseball and watching other games when the Braves lose, it's tough for me. You can go make sure you check out the guys over at Locked On MLB. Well, we're a little over 2 months away from the trade deadline, but it's the question that I constantly get: who should the Braves trade for? So we're going to begin this weekly segment now of the Braves trade targets and who they need to be going after. This week, focusing on one reliever. I'm also going to get to some of your thoughts and comments on who you think the Braves should be going after. But the reliever that I want to look at today is Garrett Clevenger from the Rays. And When I'm looking at bullpen arms that I want the Braves to go after, I am generally looking for somebody with a strikeout rate around 30% and a walk rate ideally under 8%, but really under 10%. You can have a high walk rate with a high strikeout rate. I know Mass is about to tell me that in the comments section. But I think, that's generally what I'm looking for, and somebody that misses barrels. And that's where I kind of looked. I went to Baseball Savant. I filtered it by strikeout rate, walk rate, barrel rate, and batting average against, I think was the other one I looked at, but I was mainly looking at those first three. And Garrett Clevenger was a name that stood out to me. And obviously I'm looking at teams that I think are going to be sellers at the deadline. And the Rays, I think they're only one game worse than the Braves right now, but I do think they probably will be sellers at the trade deadline. And Garrett Clevenger is a guy that I think could be available that the Braves might want to go after. And here are the numbers and the stats for Garrett Clevenger, 31 years old, so not a spring chicken here, although he's younger than me. Now I have to say that at this point. Left-handed pitcher, making just $1.2 million this year, so it fits into the Braves' monetary budget. He has 2 years of arbitration left, so he has some control as well. In 2025, he's thrown 19 innings, allowed just 10 hits and 4 walks, 24 strikeouts, a 1.89 ERA, a 0.74 whip, a 2.17 xERA, 33.3% strikeout rate, and a 5.6% walk rate, a 189 expected batting average against, and a 4.7% barrel rate. So those are all fantastic numbers. You're meeting all the metrics there. You're over a 30% strikeout rate. You're well under a 10% walk rate. You're under 200 expected batting average, and you're under a 7% barrel rate. Those are all fantastic numbers when I'm looking at any pitcher, but relief pitcher especially. You look at the career for Garrett Clevenger, and it's still just a 218 expected batting average. So he's done a great job limiting hits in his career, a 28.7% strikeout rate, a 10.8% walk rate is high and a lot higher than what he's had this year, almost double what he has this year. So is there some regression coming with that walk rate, or has he made some sort of adjustment to limit the walks? 8.4% barrel rate, again, nearly double of what his barrel rate is this year. So is there some regression coming, or is this an improvement? And I'll answer that here in a second. 3.39 ERA, so that's a solid. 1.24 whip. Would love that to be under 1.2. 132 and 2/3 innings pitched at the big league level, 163 strikeouts to 60 walks. And I mentioned a minute ago, are these numbers, is there going to be some regression? And there probably is going to be some regression, but when I'm looking at players to trade for and they're having, somewhat breakout seasons, great seasons, are they doing something different to warrant that? That was really the talk with Jurickson Profar last year is, okay, he's having a breakout season, but is he doing something that warrants that? And he did make some swing changes. He might have made some dietitian changes too. I don't know, but he did make some swing changes last year. And so it kind of led you to believe, okay, maybe this is for real. And with Clevenger, what you look at is that he is throwing his sinker a lot more this year. He's throwing his sinker 40% of the time. It was just 9.4% last year. That's a huge change in his arsenal. And it has a 35.8% whiff rate this season, and batters are hitting just 150 against it while averaging 96 miles per hour on that sinker. So it's a pitch that he's throwing a lot more. He's getting a ton of success with it. So that is a substantial change that you can see, and that you can back up the success that he's having right now. He also upped his slider usage, and he gets a lot of swing and miss on that slider. Batters hitting just 0.87 against his slider this season with that sinker. You would think with him throwing the sinker more, though, and what I was excited about when I was reading some of these numbers, okay, he's throwing a sinker more. That means he's probably getting a lot of ground balls, keeping the ball in the ballpark. But his ground ball rate is actually the lowest of his career, and his fly ball rate is the highest of his career. I don't love that. As the summer months heat up, those fly balls might start going out of the ballpark, but very interesting that, his sinker usage is up by a large amount and his ground ball rate is down. He also throws a 4-seamer, sweeper, and a cutter. So for a reliever, has a pretty nice pitch mix, maybe somebody that can give you multiple innings. Last year, he was mostly 4-seam, cutter, slider, and sweeper. So again, now he's throwing the sinker and the slider more often. And again, it's a substantial change that you can see to buy into why he's having so much success. But here's the interesting thing, because many of you might be thinking that we don't need another lefty, which I don't know that that's necessarily true either. But Garrett Clevenger has reverse splits for his career. And lefties are actually hitting 286 against him this year, and righties just 087. He's given up 6 hits in 4 2/3 innings to lefties, while just 4 hits in 14 1/3 innings against righties. And that has been the case throughout his career. That's not just a change with this pitch arsenal mix. He has a 192 batting average against for right-handed hitters in his career and 251 against lefties. So he is a left-handed pitcher that is better against righties, which is a bit of a rarity. So even though it is a lefty, it is somebody that you would want to use against right-handed hitters. What is the cost here for Garrett Clevenger? Who knows? Again, it's a guy that's not making a lot of money, and he has years of control left. So I don't think it would be completely cheap for the Rays, but somebody that I don't think is really going to be part of their next winning window. Could you get him for an Ian Mejia or an Adam Mayer? Somebody that probably profiles more as a back end starter, but maybe there's some upside there for him. I think, I would obviously do that deal. So it's probably not enough, but I think he's somebody that could be had. And again, left-handed pitcher, but he's better against righties, very cheap monetarily, under control for a couple of years. And he's made some changes to his arsenal that have, really helped him take off. So that's the first name that I'm going to throw out there. XRP Brave said, but one a left-handed pitcher. Well, I gave you one, but again, it's not probably a left-handed pitcher that you're thinking of, although you did say Garrett Clevenger or Gregory Soto. Soto's a good one too, but Clevenger actually has reverse split, so I don't think it's a left-handed pitcher you want for that reason. Calvin Fenner said David Bednar, Yimi Garcia, Felix Bautista, Aroldis Chapman. The Orioles were a team that I was looking at, and who could they get from the Orioles and take advantage of that team kind of falling apart. Bad News Barbs says whatever lefty is available. We don't have a lefty that's really dominant against lefties, so that really wouldn't fit with Garrett Clevenger either. Dustin Mount says Pete Fairbanks, so going after the Rays again. I've talked about Fairbanks before. I think that could be an option. The Braves luxury tax. Padres seem a great outfit to work with. Morhone maybe, or Matsui. Problem there is you're probably trading with a team that's looking to get the playoff spot that you're trying to get. Owen Ray says Brian Abreu. Nate says Garrett Whitlock would be awesome there from the Red Sox. So a couple of other names. And again, I have some on here too that we'll look at in the coming weeks. Phil Maton, Jake Bird, Justin Sterner, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Michael Soroka. Yes, Michael Soroka, I think, is a trade target, or should be a trade target for the Braves as a bullpen guy. Graham Ashcraft, a guy that I've always just loved his stuff. Jackson Rutledge, who the Braves saw on Thursday night, has really good stuff. Mason Flaherty, Juan Murillo. Those are some other names that I wrote down that we might dive deeper into in some later trade target podcasts. But you have some trade targets, let me know, and we'll talk about them every week here on the podcast. All right, next we'll discuss Ronald Acuña Jr.'s return and preview the Padres series. Padres are coming in limping a little bit here, not necessarily injury-wise, but they are on a 6-game losing streak. And if you know anything about me, you know that makes me nervous. So we'll talk about that here next. Yes, the Atlanta Braves once again are facing a team that is coming in on a big losing streak. It feels like this is at least the third time it's happened this year. And as you know, and I've said before, I do not like facing a team coming in on a big losing streak, because odds are they're not going to lose forever, and especially not a good team like the Padres. But they have dropped 6 in a row. They had a stretch in that where they lost 5 in a row and scored 3 runs in that 5-game losing streak. So again, they are playing bad right now, so maybe it's a good time to get them. But you also know they're probably not going to lose all 3 of these games. And just by the odds of it, they're going to find a way to win. They're 28 and 27 and 21 overall. They're third in the NL West. Their offense ranks 7th in average, 11th in on-base percentage, 16th in slugging, 12th in OPS, just 26th in home runs. We saw it there when we played at Petco. It's not exactly a hitter-friendly ballpark. 23rd in walks, though, but they don't strike out at all. They had the least strikeouts in all of baseball, and they're 16th in stolen bases. So it's a mid offense overall, similar to the Braves. Standouts over the last 15 days, Luis Ariz hitting 354 in his last 15 days coming into Thursday. Machado 342 with an 853 OPS, but no home runs, 6 walks to 5 strikeouts though. Jackson Merrill 286, but a 659 OPS, 1 walk to 12 strikeouts. And then Fernando Tatis Jr., 4 home runs coming into the day on Thursday, but just a 227 average. So it's been kind of boom or bust for him lately. You look at the pitching matchups for this series, and last I looked, the Padres hadn't announced their pitching plans, but it's most likely going to be Nick Pivetta, Michael King, and Dylan Cease. So not only are you getting a team coming in, a good team coming in on a 6-game losing streak, but you're getting their 3 best starters. So, and again, after the way the Braves played this week against the Nationals, I'm not thrilled with the matchup. Now, the Braves are going to throw out Sale, Holmes, and Schwellenbach. So you're throwing out 2 of your best starters in Sale and Schwellenbach, and Holmes has certainly been good as well. So you're going to be able to combat the good starters from the Padres in this one. And it may just come down to whoever has the best offense and who has the best bullpen. And, depending on what day it is, it could be the Braves, but it might not be. But to help the Braves offense is the return of Ronald Acuña Jr. And I don't mean to bury the lead here, but we'll talk a lot more about this on Friday's mailbag episode. But they scratched him from Thursday's game with Gwinnett. He was supposed to bat leadoff and play right field again for the 2nd straight day. He was going to play in the field, which is what Alex Anthopoulos said was the hurdle for Ron Acuña Jr., seeing him play in the field in back-to-back days. But apparently it's not the case now, and Acuña's ready to go. It's just, it's been an odd rehab for Ron Acuña Jr., and not really from the standpoint of Ronald and anything he's done, but from how the Braves have handled it. And we've talked a lot about that, earlier this week. Again, I'm not there. I'm not watching Acuña every day. Even in these minor league games, I'm just seeing the highlights. I'm not watching him every day, what he looks like in the field. And I understand it. He has to play in the field. I've said that many times. And that's what's making this take a little bit longer than many of us expected. But it's just, I don't know that I can ever take anything that Alex Anthopoulos says serious again. Because here's Acuña. He DH'd one day. He played in right field, full 9 innings one day. He's supposed to do it the next day. And at the last minute, they're like, oh, no, we think he's ready now. It's just laughable. Again, there's nothing wrong with it or anything. It's just odd. It's just odd the way that they've handled the Acuña comeback. But he is coming back, and I'm excited. Again, and coming off two bad losses like this to the Nationals, you need some sort of jolt, and I think Acuña can give you that. Clearly, he's looked great at the plate. I didn't mean to rhyme there, but I did. Maybe I found my new calling. But I think he is going to give this offense a jolt at the top of the lineup. They've been missing that. Verdugo was good for like a week or two, but he is cooled off. They need somebody at the top of that order. They don't really have anybody else in the lineup. Eli White's cooled off. He's not that guy. Michael Harris, Ozzie, they can't bat leadoff. Acuña is really the only leadoff man that this team has. And so it'd be good to have him back, have his presence in there, have his energy and the excitement. Going to have it at a home game against the Padres, a team that they got swept by to begin the season. So it's going to be a fun series. Acuña's return, I'm ecstatic. Cannot wait for it. And again, hopefully he can help boost this offense and boost this team to go on the run like I was talking about, because you just went through the easy part of the schedule, maybe one of the easiest parts of the schedule that you're going to have all year. And now you're going through one of the hardest parts of the schedule, where 7 of the next 8 teams that you play are all postseason contenders. So again, you had your chance during that slow part of the schedule, that weaker part of the schedule, but not anymore. You've got to play winning baseball here over the next 3 weeks, or you could potentially get buried. You could find yourself getting too close to the All-Star break, and you find yourself, 5 games under 500 and trying to decide if you're going to be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. We may not even have a segment every week to talk about trade targets, because we may be talking about who they sell at the deadline. I don't think it's going to come to that. I'm just saying, if they don't get it together and start playing consistently good baseball from here on out, they very well could find themselves in that position because of the competition. I just did it again. Look, rhymed once again. But they could find themselves in a really bad place if they don't put it together against the teams that they have on their schedule upcoming. And just to run through that for you again, they have 3 against the Padres, and then they're going to Philadelphia for 3, and then they're back home to face that Red Sox team again. Then they get Arizona, and then they go to San Francisco to face the Giants, and then you get Milwaukee in Colorado, which eases up a little bit. You do have a series with the Mets, but then the Marlins, and then the Mets again, and then the Phillies. So it's a very, very tough part of the schedule here through really the months of June. You got that stretch where you got Brewers, Rockies, Mets, Marlins, but outside of that, it's a very tough schedule here through the month of June and going into the All-Star break. So again, Ronald back, gonna help. Can't wait to see him back out on the field again. That will be extremely exciting, but hopefully he can help this Braves team find that consistency on offense, the pitching get rolling again, and this Braves team take off and have that big winning streak and that big, 8-2 stretch, that 15-4 stretch that we're really looking forward to get over the hump. Well, that would do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Again, we'll be back on Friday afternoon with our weekly mailbag episode, and then me and Lindsay will be back on the postcast covering Ronald's return on Friday night and the Padres series through the weekend. Hope you all have a great holiday weekend. Looking forward to getting outside, watching some baseball, listening to some baseball, playing some baseball, and firing up that grill. Hope you all have a safe and happy holiday. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.